My, oh my, do we have a lot to talk about, because the other day we were talking about how maybe the most intriguing name left in the transfer portal, Henry To'o, hadn't made a decision yet. And today we find out that Henry To'o will be rolling with the Tide, the Alabama Crimson Tide, getting a phenomenally talented linebacker, and we've got to talk about it. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you excited that the Alabama Crimson Tide were able to get Henry To'o? And let me know what you're thinking there. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification, because I do constant college football content and you don't want to miss any of it. And I'm on my push to 5,000 subscribers in my first year, and we are almost there, and I would love to have you along for that journey. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below, because those interactions are huge. But with all that being said, we really need to dive into this, because I talked about the other day when I was doing some recruiting news that every day that went by was a little less likely that Henry To'o would ultimately end up at Alabama. And it wasn't because of a lack of interest, but it was because of the lack of transparency from the SEC. They had painted this situation to which there was no real reprieve. But now we find out that Henry To'o is going to be going to the University of Alabama, and interestingly enough, it came only a few days after I had said that every day that passes is a little bit less likely that Alabama lands him. And so in my mind, I thought if he was going to go with Alabama, it would be sooner rather than later. Because as time continues to progress and the SEC is dragging its feet, that's valuable time he could spend getting much more familiar with a different staff, with a different team. But alas, Henry To'o is with the Alabama Crimson Tide, which, I mean, I think we all know this means instant eligibility in the SEC. That has to be the implication here, because I find it incredibly hard to believe that To'o would go to Alabama in city year. So the instant eligibility has apparently not been an issue. That's going to be fine. But the Crimson Tide get a really, really talented linebacker. He had 72 tackles in his freshman year, all freshman SEC, and he is, in my opinion, probably the biggest name in the transfer portal at the time. He was a phenomenally important piece to a lot of different institutions, and a lot of different institutions were really just beginning to ramp up how they were going after Henry To'o. Ohio State massively wanted this kid, and he would have been a huge addition to the Buckeyes. But he doesn't end up in Columbus, he ends up in Titletown, Tuscaloosa. And the Alabama Crimson Tide have a vacancy at the linebacker position opposite of Christian Harris. Now this right here is kind of a situation that puts me in a rock and a hard place. Am I excited that the Alabama Crimson Tide got a linebacker of To'o's caliber? Absolutely. I think every Crimson Tide fan is happy about getting a linebacker of that caliber to pair next to Christian Harris, because that might be the best linebacking duo in the nation right off the rip. However, it does hurt a little bit, because Jalen Moody is someone who has earned it. He has put in his time, and he's played very, very well. And so I'm really interested to see what happens there, because this is a kid that I think when we got to see him come in the Arkansas game in relief of Christian Harris when he went down for that injury, he played incredibly well. He did a really, really solid job, and he only continued that on A-Day, just kind of impressing people, knowing what his job was, and being very solid at it. The only thing I can think is that maybe Moody takes advantage of the free year last year and stays an extra year at Alabama. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to break any sort of news there. This is all just personal thoughts kind of flowing right now. But it is going to be a really interesting situation, and it puts me in a rock and a hard place. Because once again, I'm very excited that Alabama got To'o. He's so talented. But at the same time, I do feel bad for a guy like Jalen Moody, who really was looking impressive, who's been working his butt off. But this is one of the best linebackers in all of college football. This is one of the best linebackers and players in the transfer portal, and I think he was the big name in the transfer portal everybody was watching, because the collapse of Tennessee, in a weird way, has been incredibly interesting to watch. OU has benefited massively from it, getting Wanye Morris, Key Lawrence, and Eric Gray, and now Alabama receiving maybe the best player on that Tennessee team. Certainly the best player on the defensive side of that Tennessee team, but maybe the best player they had. OU certainly has the best offensive player they have, but I think that there's an argument that To'o was the most talented and special player on that team. Coming into Alabama, him and Christian Harris are going to be a dynamic duo, if that is the duo we will see. That can be a dangerous dangerous composition and easily the most athletic, explosive, and hard-nosed linebacking core, not only in the SEC, but in the nation. Now, there's a lot of work to go before they get there. There's a lot of things that have to happen, but that is the ceiling for these two. When you look at Christian Harris and how unbelievably talented he is, and then you look at Henry To'oTo'o, and you really break down what it is that makes him so good, you have to get excited. But it is one of those weird situations where you're caught in between a rock and a hard place. So much excitement, so much happiness that To'oTo'o has found where he wants to spend and play college football, because we've heard his family talk about that they initially felt like they made a mistake not coming to Bama. So I do know that that has to feel like a weight off of not only To'oTo'o's shoulders, but also the family's shoulders. And because of that, that's giving them solace. That solace makes me happy, that now they feel like they're at their home, they feel like where they can flourish. But at the same time, that solace is also now kind of gone against the grain of Jalen Moody. I'm really interested to see what happens here, and more so, I might be more interested to see what y'all think. Are you excited that Henry To'oTo'o is now a member of the Alabama Crimson Tide? Because like I said, he is one of the best linebackers in all of college football, whether he's on Alabama or not, and I've been consistent in saying that. Whether he chose the Tide or not, that guy is special, and that guy has first rounder written all over him. And going to Alabama, we know what they do with linebackers and defensive players, and players in particular. 38 first rounders in the Nick Saban era alone, a number that cannot be matched, and it's going to be very hard to match it ever, especially when you look at the consistency at which he's done it. Players, personnel, it doesn't matter. The cogwheel keeps going, and To'oTo'o now inserts himself into that cogwheel. So I'm very interested to see what y'all have to say. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes and N for no. Are you excited that Henry To'oTo'o is now rolling with the Tide? And let me know what you think here. That's it. See ya.